I'm Jim Abernethy, and I just wanted to look at this video from Moody, basically their rebuttal of all the social network stuff that's going on that doesn't make them look good. Let's look at it together and see what we find. Wow, very professional. False claims.
So this past weekend, we went on a collecting venture to the east coast of Florida, specifically targeting about a dozen species of blennies and gobies.
A dozen species of blennies and gobies. It just so happens that right here I have the permit, which I assume they filled out. A dozen species. On this chart, it has 86 species. Blennies and gobies. So all he forgot was the wrasses, the sturgeon fish, the stingrays. They have stingrays, the angel fishes, the pork fishes, the parrotfish, the octopus, the jawfish, the hogfishes, the hamlets, the doctor fish, the goat fishes, the chromuses, the butterflies, and the angels. And wow, so not bad. Roughly 2 species, as you can see from here. And the quantity, let's see, they were going for a small amount. They are requesting and were approved for 50 of 86 species. If you do the math, 4,300. So not a big take from any one area. Let's continue on.
That are part of a long-term collaborative project with Texas A&M University here in...
Oh my God, he said Texas A&M. There was a guy from Texas A&M that called me on the phone and demanded that I remove him from the petition because, as he said, they had absolutely nothing to do with this tropical fish collecting. In fact, he told me that he personally counted the fish and there were only 36, and he wanted me to believe him, which I told him I can't. I can't. I heard the FWC officer say that there were at least 100, and I videotaped the guy that looked in just one single cooler that said at least 200. Okay, so you actually went and looked in there?
Yeah.
Wow, you were friendly. You made friends with him, and you got in there. Go ahead. I just want to hear, what did you see? Two of
everything.
Two of everything. How many fish are in there?
Probably at least a couple hundred.
A couple hundred fish. So 2 stonefish,
Two stonefish, 2 pufferfish, 2 euro crabs, 2 parrotfish, 2 angelfish, 2 squirrelfish, 2 porkfish. Almost all the tropical fish that we see out there every day. 2 of everything.
and a couple hundred fish.
At least, yeah.
And did you look in that cooler?
Mm-hmm.
What about the big bin?
The
blue one.
Bin, I barely saw in there, and then he pushed me out.
Any invertebrates?
He had a lot of sea urchins. He had a lot of white sea urchins, and I was surprised.
Which also takes our bumblebee shrimps, right? Starfish?
I didn't see any starfish though.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, I can't believe that. Didn't think they'd be taking like those tropical fish, you know?
It's for an exhibit, right?
Yeah, that's why.
It's an exhibit. It's not for science.
Yeah, because they're better in captivity.
To try to breed these fishes. This is part of an initiative at the broader Association of Zoos and Aquariums level.
Wow. The Association of Zoos and Aquariums? I wonder if it's common practice for them to go to a specific well-known dive site and put 3 professional tropical fish collectors in there for a week to remove as much as they can.
To really be much more responsible with our long-term collection planning, to try to close the life cycle.
I'm sorry, did he just use the word responsible with this endeavor? I'll see if I can figure out where responsible was.
A lot of these species of marine finfish that traditionally have not been bred in captivity. We went to 3 different dive sites over the course of...
3 different dive sites. Let's be realistic here. 2 of the dive sites start with the name Blue Heron Bridge. And the reason that they start with that is because they're both the same dive site. They're literally within each other. You can't get to one without going through the other, no matter what you do.
7 days. We conducted about 13 different collections, and we brought a total of 50 fish and 11 invertebrates back from the east coast of Florida.
Let's just think about there for a second. Now, I haven't been to all the dive shops, but I did go to one that told me that they had filled 24 scuba bottles for these 3 collectors. And the average depth at the Blue Heron Bridge is about 12 feet. Every diver knows that you probably get around 2 hours of bottom time if you have any experience whatsoever. So if you do the math, 24 scuba tanks times 48 hours, so they were catching just slightly more than 1 fish per hour? You really want me to believe that? Oh, I almost forgot. These collectors also told me that on a daily basis they would take their collection at 50 fish. That means that they would catch 7 fish per day. They would take these catch and they would take them to their holding tank, which is 55 miles away in each direction, which makes perfectly good sense, because if you've got 7 tropical fish, you want to take them to a place where they're going to have lots of room to run. You wouldn't be driving that big distance if you could just put 7 fish inside of a cooler with a air blower and keep them alive that way, would you? Do you think there's any chance that maybe they were catching a lot more than they were saying, and that's why they had to drive 110 miles a day, as they said, just to put the fish in a container that could hold them safely?
For this long-term work. So during the activities, when our presence there was questioned, on 2 separate occasions we actually had Florida Wildlife Commission officers show up on site. They were able to examine our permits against the animals that we had in holding, and all of our activities were deemed 100% appropriate and legal.
Actually, that's not quite true. From what I understand, there was a third activity where the FWC officers actually went back to the hotel room, which doesn't really make sense, because if there's only 50 fish and they had a permit to get 4,300, why would they want to go back to the hotel? Obviously, they're way, way less than their quota. Unless, of course, maybe they saw so many fish that they actually went back to the hotel and, from what I understand, found some illegal fish that were there and forced them to release them so they wouldn't have to write them up with a fine, with an infraction against their permit. Unfortunately, the next day, they went back to the site. Thank God there were divers that were there. From what I understand, they were a little bit intimidating, and these collectors actually released the catch without even getting out of the water. And what's interesting to me, I believe he's going to tell me that in that short amount of time, they were able to catch like 20 fish. Imagine that. The first whole 7 days, they only catch 7 fish per day. But on that last day, they had 20. My God, that's miraculous. I would have thought that the first day they would have caught well over 1,000, because there were so many there, and that every day after that there would be less and less and less. And the last day, the day that we caught them, there was probably 200 in that tank, according to an eyewitness that looked in just 1 cooler.
Unfortunate that the misinformation about how many animals were taken from the environment and the nature of our collecting activities and the motives for our collecting activities were taken so far away from the reality. We would not be taking that many animals from a sensitive ecosystem.
And why in the world would they apply for a permit that allows them to take 4,300 of 86 different species if they didn't intend to do exactly that?
Appreciate and applaud the work of the local conservation groups to try to gain protection for these areas. So our decision to release the animals that we had in our hands at the time was based on the staff feeling threatened, quite honestly, by the advocates that were there. We were not there to, gather a lot of specimens, and so the few that we had in our care at that point,
his idea of a lot of specimens and my idea are completely different. His idea is of not a lot of specimens is 4,300 of 86 species. Slightly different than my view.
Between 10 and 20 were easy to release right back in the location where we had just collected them. At this point, all we can do is put the information out that we were there for very specific purposes, looking for a small number of fishes for longer term, bigger picture goals. There have been...
Obviously, once again, the bigger picture goals was to take 3 people and send them right to the very best place in North America to remove tropical fish at a time when nobody would be there. And it's very, very difficult for me to believe that on every day, all day long, they only caught 7, but in their first hour of being in the water, they caught 20. So all the previous days, they didn't catch but 7. Kind of hard for me to believe that there's only 50 here, especially when we have that collaborated with first-hand account, a scuba instructor that looked in just one igloo cooler of 2 and didn't even get to look into the big 7-foot diameter blue pool in the back of the truck.
Calls for releasing all of these animals back to the ecosystem. That would be irresponsible on many levels.
Every conservationist knows, given the opportunity to let an animal live in the wild where it was born, raised, and has been living peacefully until they were extracted by Moody Gardens, is a much better alternative than to living into a container that has to be physically maintained by humans.
Potential pathogens from these different water sources have mixed.
Wow, did he just say that they were concerned about the different pathogens that might be mixed if you were to put the animals back in? I can't believe that they would go to a place that 10 days earlier was designated as red tide, do not swim, that these divers had to walk right past the flags to get into the water, and they're actually concerned about the health of their fish.
Located, to our location now, and the stresses involved with transport are fairly significant. We were fortunate that we got all the animals over here, and they all look very good. But releasing them back to the environment is not something that we feel would be responsible.
I know that when the one guy looked in the tank, that there was at least 1 dead parrotfish. I guess once they die and you throw them out, you don't count them anymore. I'm assuming. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I find it comical. And I hope that you can finally have a little comedy relief from such a stressful week here in Florida. Thank you.